why don't we paint the town? And all that jazz.
Sea lion woman, sea lion, resting there. Sea lion.
Let it go, let it go. Oh, you're the
This is the story of the women of Broadway. Filmed over 4 months across 5 time zones, 2 continents, through masks, through Zoom, covering the expanse of the unbelievable highs and lows of this global pandemic. Through the breadth and depth of stories told here, this series gives voice to those who have given voice to so many others. Not simply a document of what has been, but an inspiration of what can be. This is both a look at legacy and a call to the future. This is a living library, a testament to our times as told through conversations with 100 women working in the business of theater, in their own words. This is Here's to the Ladies Who.
So March 12th, 2020, I was preparing for the 6th opening night because a part of my job duties was to cover opening nights and produce our live streams. All of the employees were in the conference room watching Governor Cuomo's announcement that Broadway was shutting down. And we were like, wow, this is crazy.
I had just graduated in January, and so I was gonna chill for the spring semester. I came home 3:30, and that's when my sister was like, oh my goodness, Broadway is shutting down. And I remember my dad was like, this is real then.
I was driving home on March 12th from Minneapolis, and as I was driving home, every time I stopped, another project had been canceled, and just getting more and more devastating news and losing all my work in a day.
It was just a few days after my daughter's birthday party, and I started getting those emails of stuff that I had booked that was going, we're gonna have to, I think the language that they were using then was postpone. We're gonna have to postpone this engagement.
I was in our office at Sereno Coin. We knew something was about to happen, and we were all together when that news broke. And this was the moment where it was like, okay, you're going to go home. We're going to see you in 2 weeks. If you want to come to the office on Monday, you can. That's how little we knew. And then we didn't come back for a year and a half.
So I was here in my office, but we had just 24 hours before celebrated Women's Day on Broadway in the theater downstairs.
Please give a warm Broadway welcome to Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton. I'm very excited about being here, and I have to say I've been a lot of places, done a lot of things, seen some incredible sights, but I never thought I'd be on Broadway.
And I was here, and I got a phone call from Tom Schumacher, who's the president, who happened to be at a league meeting, and said, we're going to be down for 4 weeks. And I remember saying to him, 4 weeks? Which of course now seems absurd, because anything, if we had any idea then, at the time it seemed crazy that we'd be closed for 4 weeks, but it was just the beginning, right?
I actually took a picture of Times Square on my way in that day, and there were so few people. It was remarkable to me how empty the street was. So I knew it was going to be a matter of hours. I actually had a conversation with my bosses at Disney and asked if our show could actually end on that day. I didn't feel good about asking my cast members to come in. I didn't feel good about them risking their lives to come in. Can we find out, can we bank our time on our lab with equity and just say we're going to end today, and then we will pick up when it is safe to do so. So it wasn't a matter of if but when. For me personally, I felt like we were doing it on our own terms.
We had 63 people in the league's boardroom, including our producers and general managers and union representatives, because we were there to talk about what may happen if the pandemic got stronger. And throughout the day, we were getting word about the governor's position on our shutdown. By the end of that day, we called the cancellation, which happened to be on the night that Six was opening.
I was getting ready to go to the Six opening.
I had not been hired to do the opening of Six, but I was attending as a guest.
I was supposed to go because I'm an investor in the show Six that was opening that evening.
I was supposed to go to the Six opening night.
We still have our opening night gifts for the producers of Six because we were going to the opening that night.
We were going to the opening night of Six.
We were supposed to have Six opening that night at the Brooks Atkinson Theater.
We were headed to the opening of Six. I think we all just felt like we were on a temporary pause of I was still making a deal for another show. I was still assuming at the end of March we were going to be doing pre-sales and moving forward with the rest of the summer.
I remember I thought, 2 weeks. And then when they announced 4, I thought, 4 weeks? How could we have gone to 4 weeks all of a sudden? And then the next thing it was, June. And then it was, September. And then it was, I always knew it would come back, but the uncertainty, just when is that time? Nobody knew.
I was supposed to be doing demographic surveys for the Broadway League at Dear Evan Hansen, which I remember being excited about.
March 12th was obviously probably the worst day any of us have ever had in theater. I think, the most important thing was just being an active lead producer, worrying about the company. It was difficult to be a leader at a time when everyone was scared. Everyone in the world was getting scared, and trying to exude some confidence that we would be back shortly.
It was kind of shocking, but none of us really realized how long this would be. And then I realized that I should call some of our investors because they would be hearing it on the news. And I thought, at the time, I could allay their fears. So it was, I think it was the not knowing what the future was going to hold that kept us optimistic, actually.
I was in the office with my team. We had been hearing murmuring of the impact of this thing that we didn't know that much about.
We were packed and ready to leave the city for our regularly planned break. So we left, knowing that we had planned to leave anyway. And so we ended up in Florida until the end of May. Like a lot of people, we were very, very lucky. We had somewhere to be. We were all together when everything shut down. I can't imagine how hard it is for people who were separated and then unable to reunite.
I was actually at a doctor's appointment and I saw the news come on the TV. I don't know, just seeing it in that moment was just kind of a little wild too.
And then I heard at about 3 o'clock that afternoon, they were going to announce that Broadway was going to be shut down that evening. I was very worried for everybody in the community as well as my family. And I left New York City the next morning and didn't come back for 8 months.
I think it was hard to wrap our heads around what was going on. I mean, I don't think it even fully hit me that Broadway had shuttered. Like everything felt so unreal at the time and very surreal. So it was all like a giant blur for a couple of days until the dust settled. And because I didn't have a show running on Broadway at the time, I was slightly removed. It would have been, a different scenario, I think, if I'd had a show that was actively up.
I remember just sitting in shock for hours and hours.
It was a really weird, almost a snow day feeling, if that makes sense. I feel like nobody quite understood the gravity of what was happening. Tom Greenwald, one of our co-founders who still is at Spotco, who has seen Spotco through many iterations inclusive of 9/11, kind of compared it to other Broadway shutdowns and tried to remain hopeful.
The big article came out that was like, all of Broadway is shutting down for a month. And I was like, what are we going to do for a month? I just was like, I just felt stunned.
I remember the moment vividly, and I just said to my company manager, I said, they called it. So that's it, we're down. And then it became clear that the international shows weren't going to be able to continue running either. But what it did do almost immediately, we were already closing our domestic tour of Aladdin anyway. It was due to close at the end of April. And we did decide in that moment that it would not reopen. We had performed our last show, which was a deeply emotional decision to make, because that whole company gave their last performance without knowing.
We honestly thought we'd be closed a couple of weeks, and that was a crisis. I mean, Broadway's never been shut down more than 19 days. So the thought that we could be even closed for a month or 3 months was just unheard of.
Can we talk about the last show that you saw in person?
Sure. The last show that I saw was Mrs. Doubtfire. We're Gonna Die.
It's a Sanctuary City.
Jagged Little Pill.
Jagged Little Pill.
Jagged Little Pill.
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Frozen.
A Soldier's Play.
A Soldier's Play.
Harry Potter and the Cursed Child.
72 Miles to Go.
Mean Girls.
Girl from the North Country.
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 Skin Folk.
The Prince of Egypt.
Unknown Soldier.
The Unknown Soldier.
Unknown Soldier.
Get Lit Poetry.
The Minutes. The Minutes.
The Minutes.
The Minutes.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
The Wrong Man.
The Two Parts of Inheritance.
West Side Story.
West Side Story.
The Lehman Trilogy.
Dear Evan Hansen.
Diana the Musical.
Diana.
Tina the Musical.
The Last Ship.
Very thin.
The Endlings.
Six Sticks. I was actually supposed to go see Dana H. at the Vineyard Theater on March 12th. I was supposed to go with Chelsea, my business partner, and we had sort of made the decision around like 2:00 that we were too nervous to go see it. So we canceled our tickets.
It felt almost surreal. It felt impossible. Like that must be wrong, but at the same time, we'll figure it out and we'll get through, and then it'll be April and Tony season and we'll go on as normal. And clearly that is not what happened.
I had just walked out of a session with my therapist, and then I saw the news alert and felt like I needed to reverse that order of things and go back into that therapist's office and talk about what was ahead. Such a strange feeling to, I will remember that moment forever.
I was standing at my desk when the phone rang, and I was called along with my other union colleagues to a meeting at the Broadway League to discuss the shutdown.
What did your body feel in that moment of that call? The idea of shutting down Broadway, how did that translate physically?
My response is to get very quiet, very still in moments of uncertainty.
Any
On the actual day, I think I was probably in meetings with the Broadway League, figuring out that we were going to be shutting things down. My show, MJ, hadn't started loading into the theater yet. We were about 3 weeks away from that because we were one of the shows that was on sale and getting ready to go. We were involved in those meetings and those discussions about what to do.
Well, my office where we are now is in the Sardi building. I was on the second floor of Sardi's with a lot of people. This building is filled with theater people. So shortly the news started coming down that Broadway was shutting down that night. Now the interesting part was, having just shut down Broadway, they all come down, they all hang out together. Everybody and his dog was there, all the theater owners, the head of the league, every producer of a show that was running at the time. I, thank heavens, did not have one running. My last one had closed at the end of the previous year. So I was just having a drink like the rest of the people.
On the day, everything kind of came to a close. It was the busiest day in the world for me. I had 3 shoots booked that day. I had a morning show. I shoot morning shows for ABC, so I had that. And then midday, I was supposed to shoot production shots for Aladdin. And then that night, I was supposed to shoot the opening of 6. The morning shows got canceled, so I stayed home. And then I got a call from the Aladdin people, and they're like, we're still doing it. And then I got a text at that job saying 6 has been canceled. So I ran to Whole Foods and bought some groceries and then went home.
On March 12th of 2020, I was in New Jersey doing an August Wilson piece at the Two Rivers Theater Company. It's crazy when you're in tech because you are not really privy to the world going on around you. And my friend Crystalline came to the opening night party and she was like, oh, we're not eating food. And I was like, why aren't we eating the food? And she was like, because of the COVID, the corona. And I was like, I had no idea really what she was talking about. I was in the tech bubble.
I had just come back from producing on a cruise ship. So I had been home about a couple of days, and the cruise ship obviously shut down before Broadway did. So I was lucky to get home.
My partner and I had been in London for the first anniversary of Come From Away. We were at the airport at Heathrow and we got on the plane, and as I was turning my phone off, I said to Randy, I said, what do you want to bet when we turn our phones back on, Broadway will have shut? And sure enough, it was just as we landed, all of that announcement happened. It was sort of, I would say more sort of an overwhelming kind of despair. You know, what are we going to do? What are we going to tell people? That was the hardest thing for me. I mean, we had, over the course of that weekend, we shut down Broadway, we shut down the tour, we shut down Toronto, we shut down London, and we shut down Australia. We shut down 5 companies in 4 days.
I was trying to figure out what the next step was in life when like the headlines started to come up, and it just felt like the world was going dark, like someone had just like ripped the plug out of the wall.
When the shutdown happened, I had already been self-quarantined for about a month because I had a revision to my gender confirmation surgery, which had me, you know, deeply invested in a very intimate recovery process at home. So I went like straight from the hospital to my bed where I was as I watched everything go on in the world around me.
I had an interview with a production company. I got out of that meeting on like 37th Street and 7th Avenue, started walking uptown to the subway, and I got an alert on my phone. And I'm standing in the middle of Times Square. And I was just like, what the hell? Like, where do I go and what do I do? It was almost like frozen panic. And I just sort of canceled everything. Didn't even reach out to say I wasn't going to things for the rest of the day. I just sort of like left Times Square and went home.
I grew up in New Jersey and I went home that first weekend. I was with my mom and my brother. And I was like, the world is ending. And they didn't really get it because it just hadn't gotten across to the suburbs yet. And they were like, what are you talking about? And I was like, please hear me when I'm telling you, like, Broadway is losing their minds. Like, I need you guys to care about this.
Actually, I was due to fly back to London that Sunday, and I literally put my head around the corner of Damien, my boss's
president's office and said, well, I see you. And he's like, yeah, I'll probably see you at JFK on Sunday. Let's check in over the weekend. And that was the last time I was in the office, and was basically the last time I saw any of my colleagues as well.
I was getting actually ready to engage in the industry that I was excited about. I was going to be working in theater, where I had been working in city government and education beforehand. And so this was a new shift in a role that I actually thought I was going to be really perfect for. I had been producing a youth ensemble of Pippin on 48th Street at the same time as I was transitioning into my role as a operations director at a musical theater studio. On that day, we had an audience of like 400 parents that were going to be coming to a high school. I remember having to be very forward about the fact that we needed to close the show.
I was on an email chain with a bunch of other managing directors at every other major nonprofit off-Broadway theater, and it became very clear that although not required to shut down, we made the choice collectively together that it was the right thing to do.
The 2 weeks leading up to March 12th were such a roller coaster. Back then, I think it was hand sanitizing and really washing and increased cleaning, and we thought we would be okay. Then we went to thinking, well, as long as we're mindful of the number of seats that we fill in the theater, we should be okay, to really realizing that people were starting to grow concerned and the news were becoming more and more alarming.
I was actually in Los Angeles working on the Prom movie for Netflix. We wrapped, and then we heard rumors on set about this mysterious virus. And then it was like maybe 3 or 4 days after that everything kind of started happening.
Myself and my co-directors, Cynthia Flowers and Sarah Benson, had to walk into the theater and tell everybody that we were stopping rehearsal, that the show was on a 30-day hiatus, because at the time we thought it was a 30-day hiatus, and that everybody had to go home. And then everyone went to the bar.
I was planning my proposal. It was this very weird time where everything was shutting down, and we didn't know what life was. I had originally planned a proposal in France, and that obviously did not happen because we couldn't go, and so Broadway shut down. We heard about everything happening, and then I woke up in the morning and we walked to the East River and I proposed. And so it was kind of this weird celebratory moment in the midst of all this sort of unknown chaos, right?
We were all sort of in what we called the war room in our conference room, just deciding, do we shut down? How long do we shut down? I think days later, we ended up shutting down for a couple of months. And then we've been fully shut down indoors since March 13th of 2020, and we still haven't resumed performances inside.
We jumped right into programming for the BWA. It was almost like we knew we had to do it. It was like an initial reaction.
The whole point and what BWA was founded on was a sense of community. And I think at that time, everyone was in such need of their community because it went from being so robust and so constant to being, very siloed and very kind of afraid of people.
Beth Watson, Broadway Women's Alliance co-founder.
My name is Macy Schmidt. I'm a music director and orchestrator.
Kelly Gio.
Hey, my name is Chi-Chi, and I'm a New York-based talent manager.
Wendy Orshan.
My name is Aletha Stevens, and I am the Chief Operating Officer of Spotco.
I'm a producer in the theater industry.
I am on the board of directors of Saharep.
I'm Ali Sosa. I'm the executive fellow at New York Theater Workshop.
So my name is Jennifer or Jenny O'Gasian.
Hi, I am Christina Vivenzia.
Molly Barnett, Broadway Women's Alliance co-founder.